All right, welcome everybody. I'm Kira of Kira K Designs. I've got the chat up, but you're also welcome to unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment. Feel free. I'm just going to mute everyone for the moment just to make sure that we don't get too much crosstalk, but feel free to interrupt me. I am happy to answer questions. I'm here today to talk about knitting and crochet patterns and kits that use lace, which is one of the types of stitches that I really enjoy designing in. And I am wearing for you a freshly blocked, newly sewed on buttons within the last hour concise lace cardigan. And get my tippy toes so you can see it's a cropped cardigan with an all over lace pattern, mostly seamless. There's a teeny tiny little seam at the underarm. And otherwise, this is all done in one piece, including the shawl collar with some little short rows to shape it. And this is a fun project that I like to start with because often when people think about knitting lace or crocheting lace, they think about lace weight yarn and that it's going to be a big time commitment and kind of hard to see and hard to learn on. And I don't suggest that you learn lace on lace weight yarn. If you haven't done lace before, I would start with something in a thicker yarn. This is a worsted weight so that it goes a whole lot faster. I also like something like this for a beginner because you can see all of my patterning lines up in columns. It's a version of a lace rib. So if you're new, it's really easy to track that things are working because they're all lining up vertically and you get to read your stitch pattern before too long. So this again is called the Concise Lace Cardigan. And I'm just gonna pop into the chat two things. One is a link to, you can always go to my website, which is kirakdesigns.com, but I have a slightly easier to navigate to just what you want link, which is on Linktree. I'm Kira K Designs everywhere, so it's pretty easy to find me. But from there, you can easily pop to kits. You can pop to patterns on my website, on Ravelry, on Lovecrafts, whatever your platform of choice is. And then class lists, join the email newsletter, all that stuff. So that one makes it really easy. I'm also going to put to the chat a discount code, which is Stitches OCT21, standing for October 2021, but not making you write that out. And that code is good through Tuesday at midnight Pacific, where I am, to do either free shipping on kits or buy 3, get 1 free for patterns. So again, what I've got on this all over lace sweater is the Concise Lace Cardigan. And then I've got a bunch of other lace things to show you. So I'm actually gonna take this off so I can put stuff on. You can of course see photos on my website, but there's nothing like seeing things in motion. So I like to show you how things move and drape and try them on for you, or at least hold them up. So this is probably a little bit more what people think of when they think of lace. It is a lace weight yarn and a slippery one at that. This particular one is a tencel yarn. And this is called the Little Sparrow Shawl. It is a lot of lace at the beginning and then goes into a slip stitch pattern at the end. And it's actually a lot easier than it looks. It is a lot of stitches. I'm not gonna lie about that. It's 493 stitches for the cast on. But there's no shaping in the lace itself. The lace portion is just straight up. All the shaping happens up here in the yoke when you're beyond the lace. And again, you've got a lace pattern where everything lines up vertically. So once you get used to it, you can follow it by eye, which is my preference. I don't love having to look at instructions every single row. So a lot of stitches. I would suggest learning the stitch pattern in advance if you're a little nervous. It's actually not that hard to do. I knit most of my original prototype while a vendor at a yarn show during the quiet hours. And I was able to track out even with putting it down and picking it up. Granted, not my first lace project. So this again is called the Little Sparrow Shawl. And it's a really nice shape. It's if you lay it flat, it's 3/4 of a circle, which means it stays on really, really nicely. You've got enough fabric. If you've got a pretty shawl pin, you can put one on, but it hangs and stays on. I even have worn this when I was a vendor at Stitches West, and I'm always reaching up high on my shelves and getting down under the table, and it stays on really nicely. Hi, welcome to new folks joining us. I'm showing a selection of knitting and crochet patterns and kits featuring lace. So this next one is actually my most recently published design. It came out this summer, and this is a hybrid crochet pattern, also called Tunisian crochet, although I'm shifting away from that language because it isn't actually from the country of Tunisia, and they have wonderful textile traditions that just aren't this. This is a cool crochet technique where you have a long hook and you do 2 passes. One pass where you go across picking up lots of loops on your hook, and the next pass you crochet them off. And it's a simple enough pattern. It really only has 2 rows, although each row you go across twice. Kind of fun to do. It's naturally biasing. And I've ended it with this macrame inspired fringe. And this is called the Free Spirit Stole. There is a scarf size as well, but this bigger one here is a stole size. I also wanted to make sure to show you some things that are not all over lace, because I think even if you just add a lace edging to something, it makes a huge difference in the finished project. So this one is called the Transition Shawl. It's a crochet design, mostly double crochet. You can see these eyelets here are where the shaping is to create the shape of it, which is sort of a half hexagon. Let me hold that up a bit. And then at the end, you do the lace, which is not too tricky to do. It's both written and charted. I also have a stitch diagram for the very beginning, but you get a lot of interest just for, 4 or 5 rows of a lace edging at the end of something. So that can be a great way to, bring some excitement to a project that is getting a little bit plain or boring for you as the maker. And this one, I have the pattern available as a PDF, which I do for all of my designs. I also do kits that have this yarn, which is a small farm alpaca, hand dyed by one of the alpaca ranchers. And they come like this. So you've got here 2 full skeins, those are at the bottom, and then a partial skein and an even smaller partial skein. So you would start here with the wound yarn and work your way out. So this particular one in the teals goes from dark down to light, similar to the one that I'm showing. And I've got a few other colors as well. That's called the Transition Shawl. And for anybody who's new, I have a discount code this weekend, which is Stitches OCT21 for October 21, and that gives free shipping on kits through Tuesday at midnight, or buy 3, get the 4th free for patterns without any limitation. So you could buy 6 and get 2 free if you wanted to. You just need to check out twice to make that work. All right, so I've got another example here, and if anyone went to morning coffee or my class this morning, you would have seen me wearing this one. I've done a few costume changes today. This is another example of just a little bit of a lace adding a lot of interest. So this is a sweater that is mostly stockinette. It's called the Traveling Eyelet Sweater, and it's got this panel of traveling eyelets up the front. I'm sorry, it's called the Eyelet Twist Sweater. Getting a little tired, I think, by the end of the day. And it's also got that same panel up the sleeve, which keeps going up through the saddle, shoulder, and up into the neckline. So again, mostly stockinette. As a knitter, it's nice because you're just going knit, 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 knit in the round most of the time, and then you hit a marker, you do a little bit of lace, keeps you awake, and then you go back into knit, 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 knit. So it goes pretty fast, especially since this particular one is worsted weight yarn, but it adds quite a lot to have that little lace detail. And that one, again, since I said it wrong, I'm going to say it again, is the Eyelet Twist Pullover. And for folks who missed me mentioning at the beginning, I always suggest that people start doing lace, if you're new to it, without lace weight yarn. Start with a bigger yarn where you can really see your stitches, and that makes it a whole lot easier. All right, I've got another one here that is available in kits. So I have the pattern separately, or the kit which has the pattern and the yarn. And this is another one that is all over lace, and it's called the Trinity Shawl. This one is a 3/4 square. So you have 3 triangles basically that go together. And similar to the 3/4 circle I showed before, it just stays on. You could pin it if you want to, but even if you don't, it just stays in place. And you can even take the 2 little tails and tie them behind your back if you want to, or pin them. And then you end up with more of a shrug kind of idea, and it stays on even if you're doing something super active. This particular one, the kits that I have are in a naturally dyed Cormo wool yarn from Sincere Sheep. And you get a gradient cake, which is most of the shawl, and then a little ball, a partial ball for a contrast color and edging. This particular one is a bit on the subtle side because that's how I like to wear things, but I also have like a beautiful sunset yellow into orange version, and one in green, and quite a few brighter colors if that's what you're into. And again, you'll see in general, my lace is going to line up vertically so that you can really see what's happening as you do subsequent rows and track that things are working without having to count every stitch on every row or use a whole ton of markers. And of course, lace doesn't have to be a big project. So here's a little lace accented hat. This is called the Japanese maple hat. And it's kind of a little poof shape, not quite to a beret for sure, but not just a tight beanie. Although you can always knit a smaller size if you want to make it a beanie, you could pull it on like that. And this was kind of fun because this has simple lace. There's a little geometric lace here. And then on a few rows later, you stick your knitting needle into the hole of the eyelet of the lace and you pull up loops of yarn. And that's what this texture is right here. Not hard to do, it's kind of unusual, but it's sort of fun and adds a little bit more interesting texture to the project. If anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat, which I have open, or unmute and just holler out. I'm happy to talk back and forth too, or say something again if needed. This one's really fun. This is one of my current favorites. You might have seen a photo of it on my vendor page. This is called the Wind and Sea Shawl, and it is, again, the hybrid crochet where you have a long hook and you're pulling up loops and then crocheting them off. And it is all over lace done in stripes. So some of you might have seen it during my stripes presentation that I did yesterday. And if you missed that, it was recorded too. So here, the hybrid crochet, so I'm gonna find the right camera angle to show that. We're doing stripes with 2 different colors and it's blending them really nicely. And then the kits also have variegated yarn in them. So this has one full skein of a solid, purple in this case, and it's got 6 mini skeins that you're going through in kind of a bit of a gradient. The yarn for this one is from Knitted Wit. It's a really nice superwash merino and just a lovely range of colors. I have another one of the kits show before me so that you can see the packaging, and also a very, very, very different colorway. So this one, the main color is this light gray, and we go through this rainbow of speckled mini skeins. I've got quite a few different color options for this. Some of them are one of a kind, never to be repeated. So if it says only one is left, only one is left, and I'm not going to be able to restock quite the same thing. And that again is called the Wind and Sea Shawl. Got here another example of just a little bit of lace, adding a lot of interest. So this one on the front, if I was wearing it and you wouldn't even know it has any lace, but it's called the diamond back top because down the center back, you've got these diamond patterns that also have just a little bit of texture stitch on the inside. This one is a top-down seamless sweater. And if you aren't into t-shirt style knits, I also have the diamond back cardigan, which has the same idea, but that's a long sleeve cardigan version. And this again is worsted weight yarn. So if you're learning lace, something like this is great because it is a little bit of lace done in a big yarn, really easy to see what you're doing. Now, if you want to dive in to working with lace weight yarn, I've got a really cute crochet one here I definitely want to show you because it is all over lace with a lace edge. Let me put it on because I think it'll show a little better. So this one is called the Ice Crystals Capelet. It's got this really lovely little edge here that has triple picots in each motif. And the all over pattern is double treble crochet and single crochet in stripes. So you get this really nice open solid look. It's definitely one that's gonna take a little bit of time for blocking, pinning each of these little picots, but it hangs really, really nicely with that. And because the lace here is done not through increasing or decreasing our chains, it's done through a very, very tall spindly stitch. It's really quite simple to do. This would actually be great if anyone's doing Halloween and needs a Halloween-y kind of a thing. This definitely has a bit of a witchy vibe to it in the right color. Now, some of you might have come earlier. I'm going to put on something I wore earlier today. This is can be a single skein project. And it is called the Watercolor Shrug. So it's a really simple lace shrug that's worked side to side. And then at the end, you pick up stitches and you do this little shawl collar to do a fold over. Another good one if you're new to lace, because it's bigger yarn, pretty simple, things line up in columns. And if you aren't new to lace, it's a good TV project because there are only 2 rows to the lace. You don't have to pay too much attention if you kind of know what you're doing already. That's called the Watercolor Shrug. It's also a really good gift because it doesn't have to fit precisely and it doesn't take a lot of time compared to doing a whole sweater for somebody. All right, let's see. But if you don't want to do sweaters, you could also do a skirt with a little bit of a lace trim. So this one, I can't hold it up where I'd wear it, so I'm going to hold it up high. This is called the Sawtooth Skirt. Sorry, it's always a dance to figure out where the light's going to be best for each piece. So this is a knitted skirt worked from the top down, and then the lace edging is worked sideways and attached. And it gives us this really nice swinginess. The skirt itself is an A-line, and then the edging kicks out just a little bit more. So it has really nice movement. I've worn this before when I was a vendor at Stitches West, and I always get stopped when I'm walking through the aisles because people want to know a little bit more about it. And some people don't realize that knitted skirts are as amazing as they are. They're easier than a sweater. So if you're new to garments, or if you just want something simple, that's great. They don't have to fit as precisely. And it feels like you're wearing pajamas, but you're dressed up because this is an elastic waist. So super comfy if you're spending, a long day on the show floor, but definitely attention getting and feels dressy enough for that kind of a thing. I have a crocheted skirt with a lace edging too. I don't have it at hand right now, but for the crocheters, definitely check that out. I do both knitting and crochet patterns in kids, and I always make sure to represent crochet whenever I'm presenting about anything, and often when I'm vending at a yarn show. So I've got another one here where it's not a whole lot of lace, but it adds a lot of interest. This is called the Sarnia Shawl. It's a little bit more than a half circle. And there's some lace here in these eyelets. That's the shaping for the shawl. Since it's top down, each of these eyelets is increasing by a stitch. So I've got little gradated rows of eyelets. And then down near the end, 2 rows of this fun and geometric lace pattern. Simple to follow since you're just doing the diamonds. Kind of makes sense that once you get it going, you keep going till they bump into each other and head back in, but adds a lot of interest. And this one, I don't have kits online, but if you come to see me at Stitches West 2022, I'll probably have some there. This particular one is a really nice hand-dyed alpaca, but I've also done it in a lace weight linen. It's worked out really nicely. This particular one is fingering weight, but it's pretty open. All right, let's get a little bit more crochet. This is rather a different piece than the rest of them. This is called the Star Shawl, and it is crocheted out of these star-shaped lace motifs. And this particular one I did with a gradient yarn, and I do have kits for this in quite a few different colors. The motifs are really fun, and even if it happens to be a little hard for you the first one, if you haven't done a lot of crocheted motifs, you just keep getting to do the same one over again. So it gets easier and easier as you go, and eventually you're likely to even have it memorized and not have to pay too much attention. As with most of my patterns, well, as with all my patterns that are not a super simple stitch pattern, I've got a stitch diagram. So there's a sort of visual representation of how to do this, as well as the written instructions. And for this one, there's also a layout showing you the order in which to crochet your stars if you want to use a gradient yarn like I did. So it'll go from one color to the other across the shawl. That's called the Star Shawl. And actually, I'm just going to put it on because I think it'll show nicely. This is a shape that, again, you could pin, but you don't have to. It stays on really nicely. And you can see the gradient there. And it's been a while since I've done this. So I'm going to go ahead and just put into the chat a link. My website is kirakdesigns.com, but the link I'm putting into the chat lets you bounce really easy to sign up for my email newsletter, Instagram, Facebook, shop for kits, shop for patterns in 3 different places. They're on my website as well as Ravelry and Lovecrafts. And then on both my website and Ravelry, the coupon code that I'm putting into the chat, Stitches OCT21, will give you buy 3, get 1 free for patterns and also free shipping on kits. All right, here we go. This one, this color's a little hard to see here. Yellow's always a bit funny. I'll try those. So this is called the River Bend Shawl. This is the shawlette size. There's a bigger size as well. And this is another one that is easier than it looks because the shaping is not done within the lace. Basically, you cast on and you make a rectangle of your lace, and then you switch to a different stitch pattern to do the shaping. Here, the shaping is done with short rows, but you don't have to do wrap and turn or anything like that because the short rows are all done in a slip stitch pattern. And so that naturally hides the shaping. So it makes it really easy for you as the knitter. This particular one is a really soft, fuzzy Pygora yarn from a small farm, which unfortunately I can't get for kits. I would love to, because you would love to have this, but lots of other yarns that are in a light fingering or heavier lace weight work really nicely. Right, let's make sure to get some more crochet out. This is a really fun way to use a gradient yarn. And this particular gradient yarn is from Freya Fibers. I have some kits for this, but the yarn's discontinued. So what I have is what I have. But I've got quite a few different colors still, some of them just one or two left. And this one goes from a kind of a aqua through blues into a nice rich turquoise. I've got quite a few other ones as well. And this is nice because it's worked sideways. It's a lot of stitches, but I have in the pattern instructions how to do that with foundation single crochet. So rather than making a really big long foundation chain and then having to work into it, the foundation crochet stitch lets you do the foundation chain and the first row of single crochet all at once. It's a really cool trick if you hadn't tried it before. And then it also makes it easier to count lots of stitches. So this is a pretty simple pattern once you get into it, just a couple of rows. And I find the gradient really helps me stay excited about it because it's so much fun to get to the next color. And you can see this shakes out to a pretty good size wrap, but you can also bunch it up and call it a scarf, and it works like that too. Because it's lace weight and has all that air, you can kind of squish out the air by bunching it up around your neck, and it still hangs nicely. And then you can see the gradient just a little bit better even when I have it on like this. This is called the Terraced Vineyard Wrap. And again, I do have kits for this, although they are limited edition. All right, let's see what's next. This is really fun. Something I enjoy doing a lot is combining lace and beads, especially a simple lace with a simple bead, and you get a lot of impact without a whole lot of work on your part. This one is called the Luminous Scarf. And I used a shiny tencel yarn and then glass beads. And the kits have the yarn, the beads, and also the beading needle that you need to put the beads on the yarn. So this is an example of that in a different colorway. Getting a little glare, my little dance, find my light, there we go. So this way you just need your knitting needles. All the extra tools are in there because you might not have a big eye beading needle or a bead stash. If you took my class earlier on knitting with beads, you're on your way to getting a bead stash though. I warned everybody it's going to happen. So this is a lace rib. Everything lines up vertically. It's really a 2-row stitch pattern. Turns into a 12-row pattern when you add the beads, but they're not too tricky to do. And the beads show on both sides based on the way that I have you put them in. Because I don't like having to place my scarves with one side facing and be super careful about it. Here's another fun one. This is called the Meandering Pathway Shawl. It's done in a lace weight, but not a really fine lace weight. This is a linen silk, which really blocks out nicely in lace. Hold it up, it's a little better there. So this is a Faroese shape of a shawl where there's a flat panel down the center and then the 2 wings that come out the side. And I like that because it hangs really nicely and stays on. I don't like fussing with my clothes. I like to do shawls that are stay on. And again, you could tie it, you could pin it, you could even tie it behind your back if that fits for you. And it just stays on really nicely. There, I'll let you see it against my dress. And all the shaping is done out here in the simpler pattern. The back just stays even the whole time. And that one, like all my shawls, has a couple sizes. So this is the shawlette size if you just want a little something for over your shoulders, but not anything that you're worried about sitting on. It still adds a lot of interest just like that though. Anyone has questions, feel free to ask away. I've got a couple more things. I had a big old pile are getting down to the bottom, but I think I can fill the time. This is a favorite of mine. This is actually my first shawl design that was published some time ago. It would have been, I think maybe 2008, 2009. It's called the Garden Arbor Shawl. And it's big enough to wear on your neck, but especially in a soft fiber like this bamboo, it works really well worn backwards. And this again, very geometric lace. You can follow the pattern really nicely, especially at the beginning, since this is top down where you're setting up these columns of eyelets. It's really fun to do, and it has 3 sizes. So this is the small size. There's a medium, which is a pretty big shawl, and then there's a large, which is the luminous. So if you want to get really wrapped up, that works really nicely. And that again is called the Garden Arbor Shawl, because the pattern on it reminds me of like a trellis or an arbor, and then all the leaves hanging down. I have another one here that might be what you think of with lace, which is lace knitting with lace weight yarn. And this is called the Gossamer lace shawl. It is very, very, very lightweight. And it's again that Faroese style where there's a center panel that is a little bit more complex. And then the shaping is done in these wings. And this one is great if you travel because it is super lightweight and small, doesn't take up a lot of room in your suitcase, but then you get a lot of interest out of it. So you can kind of change up your outfits just by throwing one of these on, or if you have a couple in a different color. And if you were to do it, this is a soy silk, but if you were to do it in something that's a little bit warmer, like say a cashmere blend with some wool, then it would be great for even just on the plane when it gets a little bit chilly. I've got another fun example of lace with beads. This is called the Radiant Scarf, and I have kits for this. It's another pretty simple lace pattern. The beads in here are hooked on, and the kit includes the beads and the tiny crochet hook you need to get them on. And they're placed in such a way that they're visible on both sides. The 2 sides don't look exactly the same, but they both look definitely presentable. So you don't have to fuss too much about which side is facing. And it's a nice, simple pattern, not too tricky to do once you get into the swing of it, which is my favorite way to work on knitting. I don't like to focus too much. If I do, I don't tend to get around to it. So I like a pattern that after it's established, I can follow it visually. And then I've got this little cutie in a gradient yarn. This is the smaller of the 2 sides of this pattern called the Stratiform shawl. And this is the one that I have in kits that come with this gradient cake of yarn. And again, we've got just a little bit of beading here to highlight the edge and give it a little bit of weight. The beads kind of pull that down a bit and have it stay on really nicely. I've got a question in the chat. The kits are linked from Ravelry, but not sold on Ravelry. They're sold on my own website and then also in person at shows. So I'll be at Stitches West 2022. Ravelry does have all 112 of my patterns though. And if you're able to use Ravelry, it is got a great search function. So you can look me up on there and Kira K Designs on Ravelry and everywhere. And then you can go and say you only want to look at things with lace and you only want to look at crochet or knitting or even go by skill level to say, you know, you want easy lace or you want interesting lace. Maybe you want a skill level 5 and up. So something to keep you awake. My patterns, if Ravelry isn't accessible to you, my patterns are all on my own website at kirakdesigns.com, and they're also on Lovecrafts. Now the discount code of Stitches OCT21 doesn't work on Lovecrafts, but it works on my website and Ravelry, and that will give you buy 3, get 1 free for pattern PDFs and also free shipping on kits within the US. So I've got another one here. That is a favorite. This particular sample is actually some of my hand spun yarn, so it's really a favorite. This one, a blue ribbon at one of our local festivals here in California, Lambtown Festival. The pattern is called the Belle Epoque Shawl, and you can see in the body of it, it's got just a little lace, these eyelet rows. Every 5th row, you do something a little bit interesting, and that adds a lot on its own. And at the end, you get to this really beautiful edging where you're bringing in lace. It's got baubles, it's got little picots. So there's a lot going on when you get to the end of it. This one is the large size. It is quite large. You know, if I was wearing it, I, have to be careful not to sit on it if I care about that kind of thing. But there's also a shawlette size that is good for either over your shoulders or for wearing backwards, more like a scarf. And I've got one more to show you, and then I'm going to set you free because I know there are other vendors coming on at 7:30 Central. This is a crochet pattern. It happens to be a fuzzy yarn, so I'm not sure we're going to get a good view of it. There we go. Purposely wore a dark dress so you could see a bit better. This is called the Negative Space Scarf. And I really love this one because it's almost more air than yarn. And crochet does that really, really well. Crochet is wonderful at dense structure and at really open, airy lace. And this one is kind of fun to follow. The stitch pattern is written and charted. So I've worked with quite a few people who were worried they couldn't do it. And then 3-4 rows in, they knew how to do it and were just off to the races. So that guy is really fun too, called the Negative Space Scarf. There's also a wrap, and they're worked in different directions. So the scarf is crocheted the short way, and the wrap is crocheted the long way, because in either case, when you wear it, gravity helps open up your lace, and it wouldn't work as well the other way. And that's all written in the pattern. Don't feel like you have to memorize it because I've done all that work for you. All right, well, thank you, everybody. If you have a question, feel free to reach out to me. I'm KiraKDesigns@gmail and on Instagram and on Ravelry and pretty much everywhere. If you forget and just Google Kira and knitting or crochet, you'll probably find me that way too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, Kira.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of the weekend. There's still a lot more to go. I might drop into the pajama party later, so I might see some of you there. Have a great night, everyone.